I can't imagine something being more important than my eye size, Mike. But go ahead.
Well, I was up late last night because I'm probably the only person in Western New York who was staying up to hear the results of the Hawaii primary, the Republican Hawaii
What
primary.
is wrong with you?
I'm
Yeah,
a
you got problems, man.
I'm a political nut. I almost have a master's in history. I love politics.
Did you wait up for the Puerto Rico one too?
No, because I didn't even know there was a Puerto Rico.
There is. It doesn't count, but they do have one.
Right,
But it doesn't
exactly.
count.
Yeah,
Well, that's just stupid. All right, but we won't continue your story because why would you? It's not fair to Puerto Rico to have one and not count. What are they like?
no, the delegates count, their votes
They
count.
don't count.
They don't count. They just
They're a
go, right?
territory. They're a territory. It doesn't count.
Right.
Okay, but
Like the moon. The moon's a territory.
I won't get into a civics discussion with us, but I was up around 2 a.m. and flipping through Twitter before shutting my eyes and found out that George Martin,
Oh yeah.
producer of the Beatles, had passed away at the age of 90, and it's like, I mean, thankfully, I think a lot of people realize how impactful he was on the history of music. Because the Beatles were great. The Beatles were immensely talented, but they would not have had the impact that they had on music and society if it wasn't for the production of George Martin and his influence on them. Great. I mean, they were a great band, but he was a great producer, probably the best producer out there.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Good, Russ.
No, I was gonna say I agree. Actually, where my mind takes me is a weird place. Like I kind of wonder, did Yoko Ono tweet anything?
Yeah, I didn't see. I saw Ringo did. Yeah.
And Paul McCartney did too, but I didn't
Yeah,
see.
I would expect them to. I'm kind of wondering if Yoko did.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how much Yoko had, how many interactions she really had. I mean, she obviously had interactions with him, but I think that that
No, there were interactions. They kicked her out of the studio, if you remember.
Right. That's true. Yeah, sorry. But the later albums, he didn't really do as much on. I don't think he did anything on Let It Be.
Yeah, he did, but he got frustrated. I remember watching one of the many Beatles documentaries where he was really upset. First about they weren't as heavy into the drug use as other bands were, but there was that distraction and the distraction of people coming in and out, including Yoko. And the finished production on Let It Be was Phil Spector. I mean, he did some things on there after the fact, but I remember George Martin saying, McCartney went to him and says, we want to go back in the studio to do what ended up being Abbey Road. And he says, well, I'll come in if you let me produce you instead of this.
Yeah, and Abbey Road.
And Abbey Road is arguably,
I think the best Beatle album.
Yeah, if you ask me, to choose an album from each band, the whole Desert Island thing, Abbey Road would be the one I would choose for the Beatles. Other ones are fantastic, but that's probably my favorite, more than Sgt. Pepper.
Are you a Beatles fan, Russ, or not?
I listen to them. I'm not a huge fan. I'm an admirer of what impact they had on everything, but I maybe have 10 songs that I really like, and But I do like them. I mean, here's the thing. I'm looking at Yoko's feed. She retweeted everybody, but she doesn't look like she tweeted anything.
Okay. Huh.
So I think there's an indication there. But Giles Martin actually wrote something really nice about George Martin and his kid.
Yeah.
So, but no, I grew up. My dad was a printer. We had Beatles posters on our walls because he printed up a campaign for them. I'm a big fan of Yellow Submarine. Not everybody likes Yellow Submarine, but I bought the DVD the minute it came out. I was, because that was like the sing-along, sing along.
Yeah.
I was a little kid. That was huge. I loved that.
Enormous.
I did.
I mean, yeah, and there's really cool Yellow Submarine memorabilia and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But just the influence that he had on them in terms of incorporating classical influences on rock music. I mean,
like Eleanor Rigby. Everybody knows Eleanor Rigby. Yeah.
And many other.
Well, the most interesting one, to me, is the one I always think about with him, and the one that's kind of like legendary when I've worked with other producers in music world and stuff like that. People talk about all the time is Strawberry Fields.
Yeah.
Which is which they did two versions of, and in different keys, and then the whole magic of Strawberry Fields is that somehow, I mean, and then today it would be like a button click. Okay, we're fine, everything.
Right.
But then they had to slow down the tapes of one, speed up the tapes of the other, and somehow they got them to match keys. And I mean, it's not perfect, and that's what's part of the great part of Strawberry Fields is there's weird tuning things that happen throughout, but it's amazing. It is that to me is one of the most phenomenal songs ever written and recorded in general. So.
Well, I mean,
I always marveled at the personalities, the fact that you'd hear these little stories like Glenn Campbell came in and played on the White Album, just weird things that you wouldn't expect to go on. And a lot of times that stuff was really not that out there when I was growing up. It took a long time for, like, maybe till I was like 12, 13, when all of a sudden that stuff started to get revealed about how the Beatles used to operate. And so I always was interested, always.
Yeah, and the fact that Paul McCartney played drums on Dear Prudence because Ringo Starr had left the band and was pissed off.
Yeah.
But no, the interesting thing about Strawberry Fields was the one section at the end where there's sort of like a kaleidoscope of sound.
Mm-hmm.
I saw an interview with George Martin where he said, well, we had like about 10 or 12 pieces of tape, and we didn't know what to do. So we took these 10 or 12 pieces of tape, threw them in the air, and then picked them up randomly and spliced them together, and that was how we did it. So it was only a quirk of fate that it's ended up sounding the way it did. And
that's the funny thing about that kind of stuff, because it sounds amazing and it's a cool combination of things, and it always brings up the whole thing of does it sound amazing because you're used to it sound amazing? Would it sound amazing in another order? Would have been just as good maybe, but I totally. And it's funny because the first album I did it like in a big studio, like a 24-track studio, was actually on tape, and it was because it was 1997, and just that they were still doing. There was video. There was also digital stuff that was being done, but everything after that was just a guy with a big computer screen in front of him and Pro Tools and a Mac. But this was actually done on big reel tape, like reel-to-reel tape.
Yeah.
And we did stuff like that too. We played around with it, like and that kind of stuff. You had fun with it. You could put the tape backwards. You could speed it up. You could actually. I remember watching a guy go in and edit a song by actually cutting the tape at a certain point and putting them back together. Where that's like ridiculous in this day and age. Like with how you can edit sound clips. We've all done that. So it's just.
But that's an interesting fact because it made me think that I wonder how long it took them to make some of their albums. Then they were cutting edge. They could have cut the time in half now.
Oh man, they would. Well, it would have been. First of all, they were doing it all on 4 tracks. So I mean, that's why the Beatles stuff is. That's why the when they did it in stereo, it sounded so funky because they literally things were only recorded in mono. And I had the Beatles. One of my favorite albums. I do have the remastered mono stuff, and Beatles just sounds better in mono. It's one of those things, like in a car, the Beatles sounds weird sometimes because the stereo is so defined. You hear you'll hear like a strange voice off to the side. But the Beatles in mono remastered is an amazing CD where they just took all the original mono tracks and remastered them.
Yeah, and one final thing is like when they did the whole Beatles, the Love album, the one that they used for the thing in Vegas. I mean, it was
a really good album too.
Really good album, and I liked some of the. Normally I don't like them messing with the original tracks, but it was really inventive how they mixed together 2 different songs and how they added things and how they did alternate versions of like My Guitar Gently Weeps. It was like more of an orchestral version rather than the one with Clapton playing guitar. But George Martin and his son, Giles Martin, they were the ones that produced it. So it still had that original feel because it was the guy who actually was in the studio when those songs were actually recorded. So it felt right. And
I saw a special on it. I watched the special on it. It was really interesting. It was.
There's some great YouTubes out there of George Martin talking about, Sgt. Pepper and different things like that. That are really worth watching. I mean, that album did change everything. I recently watched the movie starring John Cusack about Brian
Wilson. Yeah.
Brian Wilson. Have you seen that movie?
I haven't seen it yet, but I heard it's great.
It's phenomenal. I mean, I thought, oh, this will be kind of stupid or whatever. I just didn't know. I mean, I was not really a Beach Boys fan. I respected them, but I think it's by far Cusack's best thing he's ever done. I mean, and he absolutely kills it. And I'm
a big Stack fan, so I'll probably watch it.
Yeah. You would. It's so worth watching, and it's so interesting. The Stack guy had the craziest life ever. But one of the cool things about that is they talk about the Beatles and Beach Boys, how they were pushing each other. At the time he did Pet Sounds, and then Sgt. Pepper came out, and they were all, they were really. But what is really fascinating about that is Brian Wilson didn't have George Martin. Brian Wilson was doing all that craziness by himself.
He was George Martin. Yeah.
He was George Martin, and he was, telling the trombones to play this way, and play with your thing, halfway out, and weird stuff that you just would never do with an instrument. And he just had all these. In his head, he just had all this stuff.
And Brian Wilson is touring this year. I think it's the 50th. It may be the 50th anniversary of Pet Sounds, but I think it's some anniversary. He's touring this summer, and the funny thing is that when he redid one of his albums and did a tour in England, Paul McCartney went to the concert. There was a documentary on this, and Paul McCartney fully admits that the Beach Boys were a big influence. They went back and forth. It was sort of a playful rivalry, but there was a lot of there.
It was really you all right there, Russ?
Yeah. My dog had to go out, so I'll have to get up again when Jenna wants to come in.
No problem. They really had an interesting ride, and they touch on it just a little bit in the movie, but I've read more about it in the past. But it's just that you got to watch that movie. What's it called?
Love and Mercy.
I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Definitely watch it. I know that Wilson went through a lot, and he had his own battles and demons, but he was a genius. But when you brought up George Martin, I thought of your little war thing, whatever you called it, and said, if you had one against George Martin or Colonel Tom Parker, who would win?
That's pretty good. I like that. It's about right. That's so funny.
Colonel Tom Parker was more of a manager than an engineer and a producer. I mean,
I think I got to hang out one time very briefly with Alan Parsons.
And Alan Parsons was an assistant to George Martin on the last couple albums.
And then, of course, the producer of Dark Side of the Moon.
Right, and a lot of albums.
And then the Alan Parsons Project, which is really an underrated group, actually. I always felt like
great group, and the thing is, he was producers of some of the best albums in the early he produced Al Stewart's Year of the Cat, which is a great album.
Yeah.
A couple of the early I'm a big Al Stewart fan. A couple of the early pre-pop Ambrosia albums that were really good. I know I'm going out there, but
no, I totally agree. I mean, I
turned off that vinyl show on HBO because of music like that.
That's funny.
Sorry, I'm dating myself. What can I say?
Get a chance to check out like a really obscure album. I think it's on Spotify, or it might be you can listen to it online somewhere. But the Alan Parsons Project album called Tales of Mystery and Imagination.
Yes.
If it sounds like Eye in the Sky, I'm not going to check it out. If it
doesn't,
not
like Eye in the Sky at all.
No.
It's more like Pink Floyd. It's but it's very. And I think it may have been their first album. I mean, I'm not sure about that, but
no, I think that one was the one where they did in the '90s when he came back. It wasn't one of their original albums. It wasn't like the ones with Eye in the Sky or.
No, it wasn't poppy at all. I mean, but there are some beautiful songs on it. It's all done to Edgar Allan. All the songs are based off Edgar Allan Poe's poems or stories.
Yeah.
So it's really well done and just phenomenal. What's that Paul McCartney solo album that Martin did that I love?
Is it Flaming Pie?
Nope, he didn't do that one. Or he might have, but
maybe Tug of War.
Tug of War. Yeah, Tug of War I think is like one of the most underrated albums that Paul McCartney did.
Yep.
That is George Martin complete. And it does, when you realize it's George Martin, you listen to it, it's like, yeah, that's definitely George Martin, but it's the most Beatles sounding and sometimes album of his too. So, and of course that Beatles sound, those guys didn't know how to arrange a string quartet to save their lives. I mean, that was completely. There's so much of that is Yesterday or Day in the Life. All that stuff's just completely.
Penny Lane. All these songs had classical influences, and they wouldn't have sounded anywhere close to the way. I mean, not to say that the Beatles wouldn't have been extremely influential without George Martin, but I think that they wouldn't be, in the argument of the best band or most.
I think they'd be like a lot of like the Herman's Hermits type bands, that existed. I think they would have been in that world. I think that they just completely he completely took them to another level. And the funny thing is, he said, I don't remember seeing maybe he said he didn't really think they were all that great when he first saw them. He thought they were instruments, they were out of the time. The funny thing is, the best musician in that band when they started off was Ringo. He was by far the best, like the most talented. A lot of people think that if
I have a hard time believing that one.
It is hard to believe, isn't it?
He was a very professional drummer.
He was. They were kind of blown away by him because they were just like three guys, and with their other with Pete Best, they were four guys who literally learned to play their instruments together, and just because they wanted to be in a band. Where Ringo had played studio sessions and all this stuff, so he came in and he just kind of blew them away. And probably, had the Beatles not existed, Ringo may have become the most famous of them just for playing studio sessions with other musicians or whatever, or joining another band. But anyway, let's move on. Greg could talk about that all day. This is definitely a good topic.
Music Buzz here on Hockey
Music Buzz. Yep, I'm not gonna do that today. But yeah, that's definitely. 90 years old. What a great life. 91, I think, 90 years old.
90 years
90's
old.
right.
You really can't beat that. If you make it to 90 and you've had the kind of life that he's had.
I'll take it.
I'll take it too. Holy cow. All right, it's the 9th of March. I know that because yesterday was the 8th.
What deductive qualities you have?
I am so smart. I am so smart. I am so smart. SMRT. I mean SMART. I am so smart. It's from The Simpsons. There you go. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, March 9th, 2016.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I almost screwed that up anyway, didn't I? I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday in this time in the afternoon to try to kind of fill you in on what's going on and the comings and goings of the hockey world. And today, it's a sort of a slowish news day, but we're going to try to. We had some interesting games last night for sure to talk about.
A suspension, a big suspension.
A big suspension, and let's start there because when. We were doing this show when the trade went down that sent Tenorti from Montreal to Phoenix for John Scott.
Right.
Arizona for John Scott. And we all thought to ourselves, one of the things that did hit me was Tenorti, he wasn't a slouch of a prospect. There were Montreal Canadian fans, and the reason I knew this was Montreal Canadian fans who were really complaining about how the fact he wasn't being brought in and wasn't playing much, right, Russ? He was a pretty good prospect.
No, he was a really good prospect. He wasn't a great skater, but he had strength, he had size, he had a pretty good shot. His dad played in the league. So no, there was a lot to like there. And then over the last few years, there were some struggles, but a lot of times there are struggles with defensemen. The thing that bothers me about this is, and it happened with the Sharapova case and all these others, how many times do we have to hear that they unknowingly did something? Listen, at the end of the day, it's your job to know. And the thing is, and they say that there's always this backhanded apology. Well, I know I'm supposed to know, and there's a list. I'm thinking, like, why don't sports even have these lists and these hotlines anymore? And players are always going to say they unknowingly took something. It's the crazy thing.
Here's the problem with that, Russ. You're right, because here's the thing. Like, either they're just ridiculous, like you're saying, and of course they know they took something, or they're just taking so many things that this is nothing. So that's what's even more disconcerting to me. Like, if there are people are just like, oh, take this will make you happier. Take this will make you make your muscles.
And I get that they want to be better. Like, that's why they do it, right? I get that. They want to be better.
Any little small advantage is so huge.
Well, it does cheat the ones that don't do it. That's the problem.
And this is off the board in terms of hockey, but in the case of Sharapova, she was busted for something that had just been placed on the ban list this year that she had been taking, and it was okay for her to take for 10 years before.
That's a problem.
But now they changed it.
I'll give you the flip side of it. A guy on my Facebook page who's a bodybuilder said they've known about that drug for 10 years. Wow. And so, because the bodybuilding world's always ahead of the regular sports world. So, is that the only medication she needed to be on for her heart? Probably not. But she was getting benefits. That's the point.
Right, and fine, and that's all fine and good. But the thing is, if it's not a banned substance, okay, maybe they shouldn't be taking it, but it's not banned.
Well,
so
you got a letter, and Maria Shriver says they live and die by those letters. Like, players know when that letter gets delivered, you have to look at everything that's on there and you're responsible. So there's really no excuses.
Now in the case of Tenorti, and I mean, it was a former first-round pick, and maybe 3 years ago, it was him and probably Nathan Beaulieu who were the center pieces in terms of the young defensemen that Montreal were Subban was already established, Markov was already there, and these were the two guys who were going to be brought up. Beaulieu is a much better skater. Tenorti's advantage was he was a physical specimen. I think he's like 6'6", but the foot speed, and he really never improved in terms of even being a decent contributor offensively. He was mostly a stay-at-home because of his lack of foot speed. And if you look, and this year it was essentially he was like Frankie Corrado with the Leafs. He was sitting there for 50 games not playing because they couldn't send him down to the minors. He got sent down on conditioning stints, but they couldn't send him down without him clearing waivers and losing him for nothing. So this was a lost season, and now it's even more lost because now he's out for the remainder of the season with Arizona. At 24 years old, this guy is at the crossroads of his career.
He is.
Yeah, and it's a shame. It really is. I mean, we've seen this with other players for sure. More and more, and it comes on the heels of what was. I saw this. You see the Teemu Selanne thing, which is just basically Selanne saying he wants WADA testing for NHL players.
Right.
And he wants to ban. He thinks they should ban dopers for life. This came out before the Tenorti thing. Oddly enough, today.
Yeah, I'm sure Teemu Selanne is very popular in some NHL locker rooms with that statement.
But here's the thing about Selanne. All right, I can give you a little background with him. So I think at the Dallas All-Star game, he was in the Dallas All-Star game, and I was down there.
Yep.
And the guys were just sort of getting ready from the locker room, and I noticed that even in this guy's undershirt, he was in better shape than 3/4 of the guys in the locker room. And so I started talking to him about his ritual, and this is a guy that was working out 6-7 hours a day, no shortcuts.
Yeah.
And that's why he feels this way, and that's why I say,
Exactly it.
For the fans that say, well, we don't really care, it's entertainment, there's athletes like him that feel like they want to do it the right way. And for as long as that exists, you have to try and do it the right way as much as you can.
I couldn't agree more. And players like Teemu, who, I mean, I've been around other, for example, like Danny Briere is another one. Just you wouldn't think Danny Briere is a workout fiend, right? Or anything like that, but just having gotten to know him over the years, there were many times when he was just constantly in the gym. I mean, these guys, they have to work incredibly hard, and I can see why they would think that the shortcuts aren't really fair. Although but it is so difficult to say. I mean, we live in a world. It's just we live in this place where here I am. I was up late last night. Went to a concert with my wife in the city. I'm exhausted. I had meetings all morning. I'm drinking this tea because if I didn't drink this tea, I would be flat on my face right now and completely boring to everybody. So, my wife, all you have to do is, Starbucks is like a drug thing on every corner, and and then they are Sudafed messes people. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things.
But you get a buzz off of Sudafed,
You definitely get a buzz off Sudafed. Anybody who's had a cold knows that that's one of the best parts of getting a cold. And then I'm just kidding.
But it's true. No, but what you're saying is true.
NyQuil is the best part of getting a cold. That you can get a buzz off. No, but there's nothing like the Q. No, but you're right. You know what I'm saying? It's like there is so much. And Adderall. Last we had the catcher in Philadelphia, right? The Phillies catcher, who had this incredible season, and then hitting 200 points higher than normal or whatever, and because he's on Adderall, and he goes off Adderall and goes back to Adderall is something that a lot of people are prescribed all the time. So this whole thing is very shady, is what I'm saying. There's hazy spots here, and I just don't know where we draw this line.
Was that Darren Dalton? Is that who it was?
No. It was Chooch.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, I mean, where do we draw this line? I mean, I'm not trying to be,
Here's where you draw the line.
Okay.
If you're a 30-year-old guy, you shouldn't be getting drugs prescribed to you from an anti-aging clinic. That's one thing.
No, right. Yes. Yeah.
And that's happened in a few other sports, right? So that's one red flag right there. If you really do have ADD and you do really see a doctor, I think that's fine. But I think the problem was, like with baseball, so many guys were on the Adderall that really never saw a doctor. They just were getting it prescribed to them.
Too, Russ, I mean, ADD is very weird as far as, and you can definitely find, I think we all have a little bit of ADD in us. Sure. I don't think that's...
No, of course I don't.
Yeah, right. I mean, I mean, it's like it definitely exists, and that's something that as kids, we're giving kids drugs now that these diseases didn't just show up in the last 10 years.
Oh, it's real. I mean, someone in my family has it. You're right. It's real, and it's hard to diagnose.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that were hiding behind the medication as if they had it.
But who's to say they don't? This is the hard thing to me. Like, who's to say that we don't all have a little bit of obsessive-compulsive disorder or a little bit of ADD? And who's to say where that line is? I'm not trying. I'm just trying a little bit of devil's advocate here, but I'm saying that we're in a weird spot when we talk about these things. I think sure, anti-aging things are, taking goat hormones or whatever. I mean, there's certain things that are obviously, why would you do that? But some other things which are enhancing are also really good for people, and people need it. I mean, I know people who are on Adderall that need it to survive. So
here's and maybe this is naive, but the players in the NHL should not be taking anything other than things that are being prescribed to them by the team. Because then, if they are busted like Tenorti is, it's the responsibility of the Arizona Coyotes. It's not his responsibility because he's only taking what they said is legal.
So you're going to require like a guy who maybe has ADD to get for the team doctor to prescribe that. See, I don't know about that because that's not really fair either. I mean, the team, you get ADD usually from like a psychiatrist or something like that. Or
if you show the certification, it's not hard. If you see a few doctors and they diagnose you, it's fine. Leagues will give you a waiver. But the problem was, like in Major League Baseball, and Mike will back me up, I think there was something like 100 guys with that waiver.
Yeah. But I don't think that number. I mean, how many baseball players are there in Major League Baseball?
Oh, there's a lot. I don't know the exact number. There's
over 1,000, right? There's over 1,000 baseball players probably.
Well,
there might be 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, just 700 major leaguers on the actual roster.
Right, that's the number that was in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that 100 is that. I mean, how many people? I don't know what the percentage of people that are.
Well, I mean, the whole argument against not including players who are steroid guys in the Baseball Hall of Fame is the fact that they may have been playing against guys who were steroid guys who didn't get discovered. I mean, that's the whole argument. Well, great, Mark McGwire hit 71 home runs. Well, he could have been facing a pitcher who was on steroids. But he got caught.
But there's a lot of things leagues don't govern that help players too. And so, like example, like what Gordie Howe was getting done in Mexico with the stem cells, players could do that for their knees and for all different things, blood spinning. None of those things are against the rules, and that's helping players. So you do have to draw a line somewhere.
That's what Lance Armstrong was doing. He was taking his own blood out, and they were infusing it with oxygen and more red blood cells to give him a boost.
Right.
That was in cycling. That was illegal, but in other sports that might not be. So that's the thing. It's like these athletes are pushing they're pushing the edge of the envelope. They're pushing everything to get one advantage over everybody else, and that's when they stretch they push the envelope in terms of legality and illegality. So, I mean, we don't know what Tenorti did. He could have eaten a power bar with something wrong in it, and that's how he got busted. That's why I'm saying if these players want to be careful, they should stick to what the teams prescribe them to take. Then it's not their responsibility.
Yeah, but I just think that it's so hard to you can't get to have the teams prescribing medication. I think is another weird.
Well, no, but I think what Mike's saying is I can clarify if I come out with the right thing. The players, look, there's a list, right, and the players know what to take and can't, and there's a hotline. But what Mike is saying is a lot of guys go to the outside and get a different trainer who's not familiar with the league, who's not familiar with that list, and then they can get into trouble. Whereas guys in the know from the team they know. And so if you don't go with that guy, then you are on your own. Like, that's basically you're trusting someone else.
Hell,
that's bad.
These players could get banned for 20 games or 40 games taking something that they went to GNC and bought off the shelf.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, they don't know.
On that, right?
Yeah.
Right, and then, and marijuana is legal in some places now, too, so, everything is, you could either write candy bar down in D.C. and, have a wonderful time, and that could throw you off, too. So, I mean, there's so many different possibilities.
Right.
I think, I know it's sports, and I know we have to try to make an even playing field for everybody here, but I also think that it's just such a transient type line. It's just so hard to figure out exactly where this falls to me, and I do feel bad for. I mean, I don't like I said, I don't know, but I did know another player who was banned for substance abuse, and it really was something like you said, Mike. It was something so ridiculous, and this player never had any problems with anything else, at all, and I mean, the real substance abusers in the NHL. There's a whole other program that goes on there, that where teams send teams have them in certain kinds of.
We're talking performance enhancing drugs here. We're not talking about.
Right, we're not talking about substance abuse, but yeah, I mean, so you're right. I mean, there's just, but performance enhancing substances or what have you. Obviously, marijuana is not a performance enhancing substance, but yeah, I think that there are so many lines here. It's just really tricky. Let's get into the games from last night. Okay, so.
Yeah, I mean, the Flyers fans must have been happy because the two teams they wanted to lose lost.
Yeah, no, there's a couple things that were really interesting last night. I am just shocked. I mean, the Red Wings loss really surprised me. To Columbus, that was. I mean, we all talk about Columbus can do this, but the Red Wings, I still think they're making the playoffs, but I still think, I know you and I disagree on that maybe, but
Columbus has always given Detroit a hard time.
Yeah.
They consider them a rival. Remember when Detroit was in the West, they were in Columbus's division.
Yeah.
I think they were up 4-1 in that game, and only the score is misrepresented.
Oh, it was a crazy game. Did you see what happened in this game?
Yeah, I saw some of it.
No, this was nuts. They're up 4-1. Columbus is up 4-1, and they get a power play. The Red Wings get a power play with about 6 minutes left. They pull their goalie to get advantage. They score a goal to tie it. No, I mean they scored to make it 4-2.
Right.
So the power play's over, but they still keep their guy out there to have an extra man advantage. They score another goal, and there's still like 4 minutes left now to make it 4-3. And then they keep their goalie out. They still keep their goalie out. They hit the post. They come that close to tying, scoring 3 goals with their goalie out, which I don't ever remember happening. And then Columbus comes back and scores an empty net goal and wins it 5-3. But that was just a nutso game. I mean,
I've seen that in the old days. I've seen Phil Esposito score 2 or 3 himself on the with the extra attacker, believe it or not, with the Rangers. But you don't see it often. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was crazy. But the bottom line here is they came out really slow. I mean, the Red Wings came out with no juice at all. The Blue Jackets came out firing. Meanwhile, the team that I thought was going to fall out of the playoffs because of their horrendous schedule is just kicking butt and beating all these great teams. The Boston Bruins are now tied for the lead in the division.
Again, their road record is incredible.
Yeah, but this is really. I mean, they're on a run now. I mean, this is a real. They're on a serious run.
Players. They needed to add players. They did, and it's working.
Yeah, it definitely is working. I guess Mike just got pissed off and left.
Yeah, he just doesn't like you. He doesn't like your shirt.
Yeah, who would? The only the geeky understand this shit. We talked about that before.
Well, and they added players at the deadline, and one of them they may lose for a couple games because John Michael Lyles just got.
He's got a hearing tomorrow.
Got a hearing tomorrow for a hit on Kucherov. So, but I know that you pointed to that Western Road swing. If they get through that Western Road swing and they maybe win one of those 3 games, they're free and clear. I'm telling you, they're.
No, you're 100% right. That Western Road swing, if they come out, if they go within 500 or get 3 points out of 6 in the West, they'll be in fantastic shape.
But the other game, the Islanders and Penguins. the Islanders won the game 2-1. Apparently, Pittsburgh had some opportunities late and couldn't cash in. Kessel,
some big opportunities.
Yeah, Kessel missed on, and I saw I saw some tweets on that were rather humorous from some Leaf fans talking about Kessel. But the most impactful thing last night was Halak getting hurt with about 5 minutes left to go in the third period. I mean, if it's anything serious, and they haven't revealed what exactly the nature of the injury was, but that means Thomas Greiss is the number one for the very near future. And
Islanders fans are fine with that. He's been the better goalie.
They're okay with that, Mike. That's the funny thing.
They may be okay with it, but I'm telling you, I think Halak is the better of the two goaltenders.
No, I agree with you. No, because there is a difference too in the mentality of him being the starter now, having to play every night, versus the mentality of coming in as a backup. Greiss has always been a very good backup.
Yeah, and he's got a .930 save percentage. I think he's 11 or 12 games over 500. He's got a really great record this year, but Halak is the guy. Halak is the guy in the playoffs. He's the guy that.
Mike, if you remember when we started this show way back, you said Martin Gerber was the guy, and it ended up turning out not to be that way.
What? With what? What do you mean? Martin Gerber.
Martin Gerber. Wow.
Carolina. Come on, man. You don't remember? Go find the
just goes to show you the importance of having a good backup goalie.
Oh, jeez. Okay, here comes the Carter Hutton.
Which is the whole reason that I really do like the James Reimer acquisition for the San Jose Sharks, and last night we saw Reimer, picked up a shutout. Last night, how about both the old Scrivens and Reimer combination, both getting shutouts last night?
Well, I was going to say that James Reimer is doing his utmost to screw Tank Nation. He did it in blue and white. Now he's trying to do it in teal. But
yeah, that was a great.
Back to Greiss. What if he turns into Billy Smith? Remember Chico was their number one goalie until Billy Smith stole his job.
Well, I mean, like I said, he's having a fantastic year. 18-6-3. 2.20 goals against and a .930 save percentage. So I mean, yeah, you can't say that he's not having a very good year. He's sort of like the counterpoint to like a Michael Neuwirth in Philadelphia. The backup is maybe better, but in the end, if Philadelphia makes the playoffs, I think they're going with Mason. I would be shocked if they didn't. And
most likely they're going with Mason. I agree.
There's a long way to go on that one still, I think. I think it's totally up in the air. I think it depends on how things go down the stretch. But
it is.
I could see them I could see them switching back and forth in a playoff series with the two of them too. I think this is this could be like the good old days of
Well, here's the funny thing, and I don't know.
Michael Leighton and Brian Boucher.
When's the last time a team had success in the playoffs switching back and forth? Regular season, you could have success like that.
Carolina was the last time.
Carolina's the last one, right?
I mean, they really did switch back and forth a lot in those playoffs. I mean, eventually it was Cam Ward, but
both teams did. I mean, it was out of
Edmonton had like 3 different goalies. Yeah.
Yeah, they had Markkinen and yeah.
Yeah, but and then last year we had Bishop being hurt a little bit, but that wasn't he mainly still played despite his injury.
Didn't the Flyers, when they made the finals against the Hawks, didn't they switch between Boucher and?
They had 3 goalies to play in the playoffs that year, I think.
Yeah, but then Leighton eventually was the guy in the cup by the time the cup came around.
But Boucher got them there with a couple of huge wins.
Right.
Yes.
Penguin series, right, to get them there, that were just enormous. That
may be the last time. That may be the last time it's worked out to some degree.
Yeah, I mean it's possible, but I think that. I mean, let's face it. If the Flyers make the playoffs, and they're playing the Capitals, it's anything goes type series because there's nothing to lose for the Flyers if they make that. They're playing with house money.
Right.
It's a series. The Capitals don't just. It's not that someone asked me that the Capitals don't want to play the Flyers in the first round. I'm like, no, the Capitals don't want to play in the first round. I mean, because at the end of the day, no, they really don't, because the first round is the Capitals' issue. They have to. If they get through the first round, they could run the table. They could easily go all the way. But the first round, no matter who they play, if they fall behind, it's going to be an issue right away. So
right now it's Washington versus Detroit. If the season ended today, it's Washington versus Detroit.
And the Flyers would be pissed because they're not going to play as many games as Detroit if the season ended today. So that would be a problem.
I don't have any stats to back it up. Maybe Mike knows, but it seems like the NHL more than the NBA has these first round upsets that are just pretty epic and pretty regular. It happens almost every season.
Oh, yeah, it does. It's happened. I mean, the Capitals knocked the Flyers out a couple times when the Flyers were huge favorites back in the day. You know, so
a 1-8 upset is not out of the realm of possibility in the NHL. And I mean, I'm not a big NBA fan, but for some reason I remember like the only 1-8 upset I can remember in the NBA was when Dikembe Mutombo was playing like in Denver and they beat I think the Lakers in the first round. And that's the only time I can remember an 8 beating a 1 in the NBA. But in the NHL, I mean, come on.
Yeah,
well, actually, the NHL, I remember doing this last year, and I could look it up if I wasn't so tired and lazy. But I remember that there was a point at which last year that when I went over the last several years, that 2 versus 7 was the weirdest of all. Like that was the one where 7 was almost 50%. Like it was really close in the 2 versus 7. 1 tended to beat 8 pretty much like 60% of the time, if I remember, so 70% of the time. But 2 versus 7 was really weird. And 3 like always beats 6. There's some weird things when it was like now it's different of course because you have one. It works very differently because you have the second and third place teams playing in each division. But yeah, the 7th. So really 1-8 and 2-7 still does apply. But yeah, that's 2 versus 7 has always been a strange one. Now the funny thing is, I mean, looking just on that note for a second. So and also of course, so the Penguins lose, the Red Wings lose, the Flyers are now 2 points behind the Red Wings, 3 points behind the Penguins with a game in hand.
Right.
The Penguins are going to play again. I think both those teams play again before the Flyers play on Friday.
They do, I think.
So, and the Bruins, I think, play again as well. The Islanders, though, are the team that's really surprising me. Like the Islanders are actually really chasing the Rangers in a big way now.
Yeah.
And
they're 2 points behind with 3 games in hand or something like that.
And they have virtually a guaranteed 2 points tonight playing at the ACC against the Leafs.
Well, no, I mean, this is a total. I mean, after last night's game against the Penguins, this is a letdown game if I've ever seen one. This is, if I, not that I'm a betting person, but if I was a betting person, this is one of the games I would look at and be like, okay, this is a game.
It is.
I could.
The Islanders because they've been playing really well. They've been beating teams. They've been eking out wins. And then last night they beat the Penguins, the most important win they've had in a long time.
Right, but it almost negates the importance of beating the Penguins if you lose the 2 points.
Oh, no question it negates the
John Tavares has a history of lighting it up against the Leafs. They're playing Grice because Halak is hurt. Yes, it's the second of back-to-back games. But I'm writing my blog for the Leafs today. The Leafs right now, they must think it's autumn because they have players that keep falling. The leaves keep falling. Matt Hunwick, one of their most experienced defensemen, he's out for the year. They called up a rookie defenseman to take his place. He gets hurt in practice, and now they called up T.J. Brennan. So they're losing players every 5 seconds the way it's
going. I'm happy for T.J. Brennan. He's a local South Jersey kid, and
me too.
Actually started playing roller hockey before ice hockey. So a lot of people used to wonder, like, why was it taking him so long? Well, because he didn't grow up playing ice hockey, but he's a pretty good player. I think he'll do okay for the Leafs.
He'll only be up for a couple days and then he'll go back down to the Marlies. But yeah, he's had an excellent season in the AHL, and he's had a couple cracks at the.
Not a great AHL career. I mean,
yeah,
but he definitely is one of the. I mean, I flew back on the plane with him. Sat next to him actually coming back from when he was drafted, and he's a really good kid and big lacrosse player too.
Yeah.
Now there's an interesting article on ESPN today by Craig Custance, and this is something that we have talked about before, but that the GM's open to limiting the number 1 overall picks, which is the concept that I brought up before, that you shouldn't be able to have too many overall number 1 picks in a certain period of time.
A little late.
It's a little late now, but still, who knows? The Oilers could suck for another 10 years, and they could still get 8 more picks. So. I mean, I think at some point you got to do this. I just think that this is
hard to govern though. So what's the criteria?
Well, to me, I mean, what this article is an ESPN Insider article, so I can only read the beginning of it. Which is a shame. But I know I've heard this as well, and I'm giving Craig credit on this one. So, but I know that what I've heard is the 2 things I brought up before, that once every 3 years you're allowed to get one. You're allowed to get a first overall pick, and then the best you can do is the second pick.
Right. Basically, the lottery would continue as is. But if you win the lottery, you're capped in terms of, like, if you had the number 1 pick the previous year, you win the lottery, you get second. You're not allowed to get first.
But you know what? Here's the funny thing about that, guys. Unless you're eliminating them from being in the top 5 overall, you can go back and look. It's not like the first overall pick is an absolute virtual lock every year.
Right. I mean, hence the reason that I think most Maple Leaf fans are interested in the Leafs finishing last. Not because it's the 20% for Austin Matthews. It's the guarantee you're going to get an impact player even if you select 4th. You know, there's the 2 Finns, there's Austin Matthews, there's Matthew Tkachuk. After that, not to say that the players are significantly worse, but it sort of goes down a slight level. And that's what Toronto is looking at. They're looking at, we need a cornerstone player, and that's.
Think about it. Think about for the last 2 years. So let's say this was in effect last year, and they would have gotten Jack Eichel. It would have been like, oh wow, we got Jack Eichel. That really stinks. And this year, let's say they would get Puljujarvi. Wow, that's really horrible. We got Jesse Puljujarvi. I mean, you get what I'm saying? You need to take him out of the top 5. If you don't take him out of the top 5, there's no point in doing it.
I don't know. I mean,
that's very prohibitive, though.
I think
it's prohibitive anyhow.
No, it is prohibitive. That's the nature of it, right? But I think that the idea of it is, and I think it should be prohibitive. That's what I think it should be doing. But I think that the idea here is that the first overall pick, there tends to be
the optics.
Something about the first overall pick. And it's not just that they're great. It also comes with the publicity of it all. Like, to me, that's another part of this. Yeah. Like, if you Connor McDavid, versus Eichel is one thing. You could say McDavid's better, you could say Eichel's better, whatever. But McDavid has like a thing about him that if he goes to a certain, and in this is one instance where you have probably two generational players or whatever. But there's something to the fact that the first overall pick is the first overall pick, is the best player you can get, and when you can get the best player you can get, that's a huge bonus for certain cities who could use it.
There's a certain cachet to the number 1 pick.
And cities can use that in their ticket sales. They can use it in other things.
But it's not like it's not like they do a commercial after and say, "I'm going to Edmonton." Like all of a sudden, tourism.
No, but you can guarantee. I mean, Edmonton's a bad example, but you can guarantee that every salesperson who works for that team that gets the first overall pick is calling up their season ticket holders the next day and saying, "Are you re-upping your tickets? We got Connor McDavid." That is definitely a big factor. I mean, and you get certain things.
But here's the thing, though. But again, getting back to that, McDavid could have been the number 2 pick. Like, I'm just saying, you're putting.
Right. Oh, yeah, it could have been. Yeah, no, I know. I agree. I don't disagree with you there. But I think that in most cases, like next year, it seems like there is a definitive number 1 pick, right? I mean, that this is Austin Matthews is the best player. Would have maybe been number 2 last year, so
3.
He's 2 or 3 perhaps, or but it's arguable, right? So this is a situation where whoever gets Austin Matthews does get a huge bonus and does get a chance to sell tickets. That's why I want him in Arizona. That's why I want him in, Carolina or someplace like that where he can actually help sell tickets.
Toronto.
But that's just my thinking. So anyway, I do think it's interesting that they're discussing it. I'm surprised they have taken this long to discuss it, and it's taken a heck of a lot of weird coincidences for them to discuss it. Like Edmonton getting all these picks is definitely, this is a situation where they're only reacting to the fact that if Edmonton hadn't gotten all these picks, they wouldn't be having this discussion at all. So
I wonder when they're having those meetings what Edmonton's defense is. What could be your defense, like to try and keep it going?
Yeah, right. I know.
We're trying to win, but we just can't help that we suck.
It's crazy. I mean, it's really ridiculous.
Well, honestly, the reason for this situation happening is because, and not to say that the management now is like this, because I think Peter Chiarelli is one of the better GMs in the league and Todd McCullough is an excellent coach, but the management in Edmonton was incompetent, completely and utterly, because they drafted the same type of player with all except Taylor Hall, the same type of player with all these picks. How many small, skilled forwards can you draft?
Well, but really, that's not what's killing Edmonton. It's not the first overall picks. It was really everything else.
Well, yeah,
2 through 7 was epically bad for like 3 or 4 years, and that's where it really hurt them.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, granted. I mean, they basically have nothing to show for the rest of the drafts, and you can say they drafted good players. But the thing is, when you have a chance to draft cornerstones for your franchise, it's better to diversify and draft a defenseman who's a cornerstone, a power winger that's a cornerstone, and not small skilled centers and wingers 3 times of the 4 picks.
But this is another thing I think that's really unique to a Canadian city like Edmonton. Is that the fans there are very into the draft, like the concept of like those. So you're getting this player, and you can't not take Yakupov because if you're a draft person, you have to take Yakupov. And if you're many of those years, I mean, honestly, there was never a question whether the Edmonton Oilers were going to take Yakupov or not.
No, especially when the owner overruled the management, because that's reportedly what happened. Was Daryl?
Yeah, I never bought that. I don't know. Maybe I mean, it's really buy that. I mean, that seemed to me like some sour grapes going out the door. I don't know. It felt really weird.
It could have been, but it's anything is possible. It really
anything is possible. No, and I'm not saying ownership hasn't overruled general managers. I mean, that happens all the time. But Yakupov was such. Everyone, he was the guy. There was no question. Everybody, I mean, Columbus was pissed that they couldn't draft Yakupov.
Right.
And they ended up doing better for not doing it. But
Well, I mean, to me, Edmonton should have taken Ryan Murray, and they should have, if they thought that he wasn't worthy of the number 1 pick, they should have traded down so they could draft Ryan Murray, but they didn't. And I think it's to their detriment. A couple things that just came out here. The NHL released a statement saying that allegations against Patrick Kane were, quote, unfounded, unquote. Kane met with Gary Bettman this week to conclude the investigation. The other thing is the outdoor game announcement that may happen tonight.
Yeah.
John Shannon from Sportsnet's reporting that 3 more outdoor games will be announced today in St. Louis, in Pittsburgh, or I think it's Penn State, right?
No, it's not.
It's Pittsburgh and Philly. This is what my blog was saying. Yeah. But that Pittsburgh, Philly is in Pittsburgh, and it's not.
Yeah, I don't get that. They already had one at Heinz Field.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking into right now. I've been trying. I mean, I've been working on this the last day or so. I think.
I'll tell you my theory. Here would be my theory on this. Initially, Jeffrey Lurie did not want it and didn't want the Eagles field torn up, so he turned down before Citizens Bank. I heard that he had
That's absolutely 100% true. They tried even before that. They tried to get a game in there, and they wouldn't let him.
Right now, maybe they tried again, and maybe he turned them down again.
But I mean, Penn State is the bigger thing. Like, to me, like, Penn State is where this was going to go. That's what they were talking about before, and I don't know what happened there.
The traffic problem is the problem.
Yeah, it would be a logistical nightmare because I've been to was it State College, PA, for a concert once. You've got one highway coming out west, one highway coming out east, and imagine 100,000. Now they handle 100,000 people or whatever it is for football games. So they
do it all the time.
Parking and stuff like that. But just the fact that they're all going to be going out at the same time would probably be a bottleneck.
Yeah.
I know they wanted to do it there, so I'm curious as what happened. I think something went. Maybe they just did research like you're saying, and they decided it was unfeasible. But I don't think so.
Based on the big house, they're staying away from it.
Yeah, because that was a disaster, and the game was great, but the disaster was the weather afterward, and people, I know people who it took them 12 hours to get back to Toronto because of weather conditions. The other one was Detroit-Toronto, which will apparently be on New Year's Day, but won't be called the Winter Classic because, God forbid, they give a Winter Classic to Canada. Oh my God!
Yeah, but it's about American marketing. That's the whole thing behind it.
I'm an American, and it's American bunk. It's
the winter regular game.
Yeah.
So the St. Louis one will be the Winter Classic. Then.
Yeah, that'll be classic. The other one.
Toronto doesn't get the Heritage Classic. They don't get the Winter Classic. They get the Lake Ontario.
They don't get enough. Toronto doesn't get anything.
They get the Great Lakes Classic against the Lake Michiganders from Detroit.
You get the World Juniors all the time. They get the World Cup of Hockey. These aren't Maple Leaf things, granted, but
yeah, exactly. They don't get first picks. They don't get playoff. They don't get nothing.
They don't get respect. They sure as hell don't get wins. They barely get
They
coached.
don't want wins right now.
I know. This is one of my favorite pictures of the year. So if I was to say, I try to show some fun pictures on here. This is one of my favorites this year. So I wanted to end with this one today. This is really great. I don't know what else can you say. That's an awesome shirt.
That's good. I like that.
It's the first player with 2 emoticons for a name. That people have said this before to me, but I love it. I love that this concept. This is something that my daughter would love. She's just walked past me, but she would love this for sure. This is no question about it. If they make this available, the Flyers should absolutely sell this. Someone made this.
Nothing else. If the Flyers just put this on the kids' practice jerseys in rookie camp, we'd all be happy.
Yeah, no, this is something. I mean, they would sell a boatload of these. A boatload of these. Sorry, do we need new milk? My daughter's like, this milk's expired and disgusting. Anyway, sorry. That's the fun of doing a show.
It'll be yogurt. That's all. Just tell her it'll turn into yogurt.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Time for the draft lottery
doesn't
simulator.
Kill you, it makes you stronger. Come on. Okay, here we go. Let's do the NHL lottery simulator. Who actually have fun, interesting news about the lottery simulator they can't share. But anyway, okay, here we go. Let's do it here. Okay, the lottery simulator today. Of course, we know for sure that the Maple Leafs are still at the top of this list. So, winner is this year.
That's a 1% chance.
Holy cow!
The 1%ers.
Sorry, I just had to break away from that. That's insane. Boy, oh boy! Better get. Maybe the Flyers will retweet this one.
Twitter would break if that happened in real life because the Flyer haters would go crazy and the Flyers fans would go crazy.
That is crazy.
Number 2.
Cal. Number 2, the Arizona Coyotes.
Oh, Arizona would be pissed off if they ended up 2.
This logo. You ever say ah? Anyway, next up. All right, here we go. It's a weird. Anyway.
It's howling.
No, but howling doesn't look like that.
Pick the third one.
Like that.
Howling is like their mouths are closer together. It's like ooh sound. This is like a yawn. Anyway, here, continue.
Well, have you ever watched the Coyotes play?
Yeah. And the Winnipeg Jets, previously known as the All right, so there you have it, guys. I'm taking a picture of this right now. And I am going to tweet this out because, my goodness, holy cow, let me just do this, put this on Instagram, and we'll be good to go. There's nothing more exciting than watching someone else put something on Instagram. So I'm going to take this picture. Here we go. That's insane. There you have it. Anyway, remember, guys, we'll be back again tomorrow. Tomorrow will be Thursday, I promise. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.